Hello out there, and I know guys that it's been over a week already since Blade Show ended, but I'm finally getting caught up in life and I wanted to do one more quick, hopefully quick video just recapping some of the stuff that I might have missed in my previous coverage and talking about some of the people that I met and just how cool our community is, guys, because that's really the big takeaway from any time I go to events like this. It's just the people that I meet, and so I'm going to focus on them at the end, but I'm going to start with some of the knives and the experiences I had at some of the booths that I didn't cover in my previous videos. So if there is anything in particular you want to know about, definitely ask a question. If you have any feedback about the way I covered or what kind of videos I did, definitely let me know. Comments down below. Constructive criticism is always very welcome. I am going to start with Spyderco. I haven't talked about Spyderco yet because well, it's sort of hard to film their new stuff because they don't want you to take pictures of the prototypes, and all the stuff that's already out, well, we've talked about before already, for the most part. So let's just talk about some of the prototype and in development kind of things that I was able to see and remember for this video. The first thing, there's a lot of variations of previous models that we're going to be seeing. The Chaparral is going to have more Raffir variations coming out like it did a couple years ago. The Paramilitary 2 had a bunch of different handle materials. So there was like a turtle shell kind of pattern. There was an hourglass pattern, honeycomb, bunch of cool stuff there. And also the Yojimbo was getting a larger version called the Yojumbo. The Subvert, which was a surprising hit, actually, for me at least. I guess a lot of people saw it coming, but I didn't. That's getting a smaller version, which actually might be a lot more appealing to someone like me. So that's also pretty neat. And then the Shaman is getting a micarta sprint run, amongst others, because I'm sure it's going to be getting a lot more sprint runs. So yeah, a lot of those variations are going to be things to look forward to. The Sage 5 Lightweight, I was able to get that in my hand. That knife is going to be a home run, guys. And I'll tell you right now, it is going to be, at least in my opinion, head and shoulders above the Para 3 Lightweight, without a question. While the originals are pretty close, neck and neck in my book, the lightweight version of the Sage 5, I think is going to blow the Para 3 out of the water. Also, another new design is going to be coming from Paul Alexander, the guy who did the Akuchi. Very similar opening style, same kind of round flipper, but a little bit more broad and shorter blade shape, a little bit more EDC appropriate for more people, I guess, than the Akuchi. What else was there? There was the Spy Fox Vox, which is a collaboration with Jesper Voxnäs. And actually, I don't even think that he knows that they're doing that collaboration because it's Fox and Spyderco just partnering with the Suru design from Voxnäs. So my buddy Jacob, who was there, I think he said he brought it up to Vox and Vox didn't even realize. So yeah, that might just be something that's in the early stages. Also, the Schliess Swayback, hard to say, but that knife that I was really into last year, it wasn't there this year, but the guy at the booth said that it is still in the works and still coming, just didn't have an example at Blade Show this year. So hopefully we will see that one soon because that knife was awesome. There's a lot of other cool stuff there. But, a lot of it just has slipped my mind, and I don't have any pictures, and I wasn't smart enough to write it down, so, yeah. So that's Spyderco for you, for anyone who is interested in that. Getting over to Benchmade, Benchmade really didn't have much new stuff, nothing that is really jumping out at me. Every time there's a new model that I'm not interested in, I handle it, I like it, but I don't end up buying it. The coolest thing about Benchmade there was the people. They had a guy working there named Troy, who was super cool and really friendly. We chatted a lot about stuff, and when I picked up the Benchmade 350, and let me see if I have it right here. When I picked it up, I went to the booth there and I showed it to the people working, and they all got really excited. And then I was talking about how I was trying to find an Aries, and one of the other people at the booth got really excited when she heard that. And it was just, it's cool to know that the people who work for the company are really into not just the current products, but the history. Because the Aries has been out of production for a long time, this even longer. And so for them to get excited about their company's history and them to be so knowledgeable about it was a good thing to see. The other cool thing about Benchmade was the winner of the Benchmade Fact raffle Rodney was actually at Blade Show for one of the days, and we were able to do the exchange, and I was able to give him the knife and all the prize package stuff at the Benchmade booth, which is just one of those awesome experiences where everything lined up. So the people at Benchmade were great. Meeting Rodney was great, and yeah, so good experience there. Talking about ZT and Kershaw real quickly, I'm going to have a full dedicated video to a conversation basically that I had with one of the guys at the Kershaw booth. Just a really enlightening like shop talk, getting an understanding of how the business is run. And I'm going to do just like a conversation video about that in the future. But the only new knife that I haven't talked about was the new ZT, the 0223. And no, it's just not going to be for me. I don't really, I get the history of it and I appreciate it on that level, but I don't see it for the price that they sell it at, and I definitely don't like love the design myself. So maybe some people will, and hopefully it sells well, at least as much as they need it to, but yeah, not really anything for me. One thing that was very cool, one cool locking mechanism that I was anxious to try out was the ant lock over at Steel Will. And I checked that out. It seemed like a really cool knife, guys. The one that it's on, it actuates pretty easily. It's essentially a back lock mechanism, and I was just curious how it would lock up and how, you know, functional it would be, and how fidget friendly, and just if it was an improvement of the back lock or if it was just something easier to open and close. And I don't know. I don't know that it's like any improvement in actual lockup, but it did seem to be a pretty legit locking mechanism, and it worked well. So I'm expecting to see a lot more from them with that locking mechanism. Another thing about locking mechanism... Okay, another thing about locking mechanisms, let's try to do this. There was a pretty neat knife that I've been looking forward to for a while called the Ready by Mikkel Willemsen. And this one's going to have two variations. The one you see in the picture right here is actually a slip joint, but the other one, the one that they had like on display, I was able to get my hands on, had basically an axis lock. And so I'm really curious to see how that knife goes and how that one works out. And that one wasn't available for purchase at the show, but it should be coming soon. A couple other knives that jumped out at me. I went over to the Wesson booth, and they had the Allman available for purchase, which is a Kickstarter knife. And I got it in hand. They only had the titanium version for sale. I got it in hand, and I just didn't like it. I didn't like it as much as I thought I would, and I was sure. I was like, man, I'm going to be the first person with one of these. I want to buy it, and I didn't, because I didn't care for the way that it was in hand. It just didn't feel that comfortable. The G10 versions, I think, feel a little bit better, so I might revisit that in the future. But for now, no, I sort of passed on it. And one of the reasons I passed on it was because as soon as I left the Wesson booth, I went to a booth called the Summit booth. I had no idea what Summit knives were. I'd never heard of them. They really only have one model that I know of called the Half Dome, and it was a really similar size and similar kind of like a philosophy of use type of knife to the Wesson, a similar price, and it was way better. I liked it way better, and there's actually a giveaway for it, and one of my buddies, Jacob, Harbor Master Up, who I'll talk about again in a bit, he won it. So he's getting a free one of those, which is super cool. The last couple things I want to talk about as far as knives go, Holt Blade Works. Everybody was telling me go to Joe Holt, and check out his booth. And I got to tell you guys, you were right. You were absolutely right. The first time I held one of those knives and opened it in my hands and closed it, it was on a different level. It was priced at a different level too. You know, $600 for like the cheapest ones, and those aren't like the full dressed customs, I don't think, but they're super sweet. Those knives are really good, and there's no doubt about that. So thank you to everyone who suggested that booth. What other stuff was there? Yeah, Great Eastern Cutlery, like I said in my previous video, they were not there, unfortunately. I wish they had been. I did find a dealer who had a ton of their knives, though. Man, if I would have just if I would have known, I could have taken orders. I could have just brought a ton of money and then flipped a bunch of knives. I mean, there was so much that I could have done because there were so many great knives that would have sold for a little bit more online, and in person there were some good deals. So what might have been, but yeah, it was really excellent to see that many classic, like traditional kind of knives in one spot. So I really had a good time and spent a lot of time at that booth with that dealer. And yeah, I think that is just about it for everything I wanted to talk about with the actual booths and dealers. Oh no, there was one more. Another Vox design from MKM that I'll put in a picture of right here. So that was one that a little bit smaller knife than I tend to carry nowadays, but was really one that jumped out at me. So there's that. Now let's get into the people, and I'm going to start with my buddy Machete J, who came down from Iowa again. I never met him till Blade Show last year. Didn't meet him in person till that point, at least. And we had a great time last year at the show, and this year it was the same. He's just a great guy. Really liked spending time with him and checking out some of the booths together. And it makes the show a whole lot better when you have someone to check it out with who really is into it as much as you, and he definitely had that. So a lot of fun with that. And then the other guy who I've been talking to for a couple years and finally got to meet was Jacob, Harbor Master Up. He came down from Michigan for the show, and he had a bunch of people that like he met up with, but we spent some time together. He won that knife. Just an awesome guy. And that's really the story of the whole weekend. It's just a lot of awesome guys. The number of like YouTubers and reviewers and people who I've known of for a long time and got to meet, it was incredible. I got to meet Jimmy Slash finally, and that was awesome. I mean, that was one of the highlights of the entire weekend. And Slicey Dicey, I actually spent a lot of time with, and he was a super cool dude. I met Eugene Kwan. I met Super Steel Steve. And anyone who watches Super Steel Steve, it's genuine, guys. He's exactly that way in person, and it's it's something else, man. It was a pretty rowdy bunch in the pit, and Stasa 23 was down there in the pit, and so I spent more time with him this year than I did last year, and that was really cool. Bumped into Dr. Frankie a bunch of times and chatted with him, and he's another just cool, down-to-earth guy, and it just goes on and on and on, Daddy-O EDC, again, just down-to-earth, really matter-of-fact, like nice, just friendly people. I also want to give a shout-out to Zelric, who was very, very busy at the Wii booth and found a lot of time to talk to me, so that was very cool of him. Yeah, and then the designers who I met, it wasn't as many as last year. I wasn't pestering people, I think, as much as I did last year. But, I did get to meet Ken Onion, which was remarkable. Justin Lundquist, I talked with a lot. I talked a lot with the guys from CRKT, just at the show and also at the pit, just hearing some of their ideas and talking about the direction of the company, and they're always very forthright and open about things, and so it's been good to talk with them every time that I have. And yeah, just a lot of new up and coming kind of distributors and in companies that you get to meet these people and see them when they're either on their way up or just trying to break in, and everybody has that passion for knives, and it's pretty incredible. I got to buy a knife from Jesper Voxness himself. I mean, and it was Jesper's birthday. I didn't even realize that. It was his birthday, and he sold me a knife. I talked with Eric Lesser again, not nearly as much as I did last year, but had a little chat with him about sprint runs and production, and he was cool. And also, I mean, I definitely don't want to forget the fact that there were a number of people who just came up to me and recognized me. And that's something that, like, I mean, I'm not on camera all the time, and I'm not some, like, massive channel. So the fact that happens at all is, like, it I can't really describe what that feeling is like, just to be a person who someone else comes up and wants to meet. I mean, it just is that's just a special feeling. And so to everyone who I bumped into who watches, I mean, thank you, because that, I mean, yeah, that really made a that made my day a couple different times. You know who I didn't meet though? I didn't meet Birdshot. I didn't meet Frankie or Bird, and it's not like I'm that tight with them. You know, I watch some of their videos. I don't think that they watch mine. I mean, we've interacted and conversed a couple times, but I've been to 3 shows now that they've been to, and I just haven't bumped into them. And I'd like to. So at some point, hopefully, maybe next year, or if I make it to Blade Show West or something like that, hopefully I'll bump into them and get a picture or something. That would be cool. But otherwise, guys, yeah, the last people that I want to talk about, one of the biggest highlights, I'd say, were the people from Knife Pivot Lube. And it was their first Blade show, and I met them the first night in the pit, and I was wearing a Blade HQ shirt, like a fanboy. I wasn't even thinking, and people were coming up to me thinking I worked at Blade HQ, and it was really almost nightmarish because it happened like 3 or 4 times. But the guy from Knife Pivot Lube came over to me, thought I worked with them, and then I ended up introducing myself, and he remembered who I was just because we've interacted before online, and vice versa. And yeah, I mean, just the conversations that I had with them, and just how, I don't know, just how friendly and excited and genuine they were just about their product and about just being there and just happy and excited to be part of something. Yeah, that you feed off that, and when so many people have that same feeling, it just makes for an excellent experience. So they were definitely a highlight as far as that goes, and I had a lot of good conversations with them. So yeah, that's really it, guys. I just wanted to follow up and just wrap up this experience with one last video and give you just a little bit more information and just talk about some of the highlights, and that's it. So any other questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, like I said, if you have any feedback about how the coverage was this year versus last year, or what kind of stuff you want to see, or what style of video to do, let me know, because it's really difficult to focus on filming and recording things when you're just in the moment and overwhelmed by the sheer amount of information and knives in front of you. So yeah, your feedback is always welcome. Thanks for watching though, and take care. I'll talk with you soon.